Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope you're having a fabulous Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our show today, our title, let's just get to it. Biden and Trump, two old ass white men. Now, I know people are going to preach. Why'd you come up with that title? You could have been nicer. I did, but I really channeled the feelings and emotions of my grandfather and my father, and this was the only title I could come up with. So let's start. First of all, I want to give a shout out to the city of Houston, Masjid Wathedin Muhammad, that hosted the Resilience Conference. Shout out to Cornell West, Abdul Rahman. So many people came through. Shout out ISGH for facilitating the masjids and all of the imams that came from around the country during Black History Month to deliver khutbahs around the city of Houston to let people know that Black Islam, Black Muslims have a place, a very meaningful and profound place in the history of Islam, not only here in the United States, but throughout the world. So that's number one. Number two, I want to also give a shout out to Ma'am Tyree Elamine. His Kansas City Chiefs did defeat the 49ers. Now, I didn't have anything on that. I didn't bet anything. He beat my Ravens. They beat my Ravens. But he's a big Kansas City fan, and I just want to shout out that brother because he is definitely a fan. He's euphoric. That's this third Super Bowl is probably next to going to Hajj 2 times in a row. He is in a good place. So let me explain titles. Before we get into this, I want to really talk about semantics. If you look at the title, Biden and Trump, two old ass white men, it's not the vernacular that you think I'm putting it in. The two is two of them, and then it's two, an adjective that says it's extreme, like too much or too little. There's extremity. There's something in there that says that it goes against the balance of what we normally see. Now, ASS, brothers and sisters, ASS, I want to say is part of assume, but I just left it ASS for teaching purposes, if you will. I call these guys asses because they do assume something about all of us. That in the vernacular of politics, very much so, the BIPOC vote or the oppressed people vote, people of color vote, is a very compromised vote in the eyes of these people. Let me tell you guys something that you didn't know. If you didn't know, I'm just refreshing you, and I'm going to be purposely redundant. When it comes to oppression, there's two things you need to know. The oppressor never sees the oppressed as equal. They never see the oppressed as equal. And if they see the oppressed as superior, then something is wrong with the way that they oppress. They haven't learned anything. They haven't had a change of heart or come to Jesus moment. It means that the methodology that they use to oppress people is not effective. Thus, they must find something else. Mark that down for Palestine as well. But in this space, in this learning core of an election year, I think everybody should be aware that we're beginning to see a redundancy whereby the people that are presented to us that are supposed to represent our interests in a very, very redundant and disrespectful way have gotten away from even addressing the basics of our core values, the smallest of our core values. Things like education really won't be on the books this year. Things like fairness and job opportunity won't be on the books this year. It will be a mandate for democracy. Now, anybody here who's Black or Latino or just hell, cognizant, not woke, cognizant, aware, knows that American democracy has plenty of problems. When I say plenty of problems, I'm talking about a plethora of problems. Throughout history, the problem is for democracy, you have to fight to make people realize and recognize this is the way it works. Over time, the whole idea of democratic appeal for the Republicans, the Democrats, it has been a hodgepodge of people who jump ship. They're bandwagon politicians who look for ideas number one, and they also look for position to make sure that they can stay in a position to maintain a status quo that allows them to maintain their own level of status quo. Now, we're going to take a quick break. And I'm going to riff after I holler out my shout out show family. And shout out to anybody who's out there on Instagram. God bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. But I'm going to be very, very didactic talking about this whole story of two TOO old ass white men. We'll be right back here on the shout out show. Okay, we're back. Now, first of all, I want to give a shout out to my shout out show family on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Also, my new shout out show family, courtesy of IG, Instagram, Live. I want to give a shout out to everybody. We'll try and do the screens here in a minute. Satana will help me. I think there's a lag with Instagram, but I'm just saying. But let me give a shout out to our soldiers. Sister Ree, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace to you and Derek and Brother Juwan. Give me a call or text. Let me know you're doing all right. It's been a minute. My mom asked about you. Want to give a shout out to Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down, Brother Altaf Rashid, coming all the way from Toronto, Canada. We call him Mr. 6 o'clock. He is our Canadian envoy to the show, making sure the quality of this show is good on that side of the border and this side of the border. Mr. Quality Control. I also want to give a shout out to my brother. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my little brother. Much love to you, JT. Making sure his brother is doing this thing. And I got the bracelet on too, bro. I'm working. I'm working. This was a gift from my brother, and I put it on. So now you can see I'm wearing it. Shout out to you, man. I hope you're having a very, very blessed day. My main man, Bilal Salahuddin, and by default, his queen, Sister Sonia Dalton Salahuddin. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brother. Hope that you're doing well. And I saw the little man, I think it was on TikTok, man. You guys painting the wall. That was fun, man. That was fun. We got to share that sometimes. With your permission, we got to share that sometimes. And what's a shout out show without an executive producer? Sister Satana Whitfield, who has joined us working the ones and twos of StreamYard, who makes this thing very, very smooth, just so you guys know. Extremely smooth. I'm feeling so confident, Satana. I might go back to standing. Satana's like, don't do that. Don't do that. All right. So let me get to the core of this thing, which is talking about these white men. Now, let me give you a foundation. Now, this may be wrong. They say, in Islam, they always, this disclaimer, there's no racism in Islam. But damn it, there's racism in me. And I don't mean outwardly. I'm just talking about what America would do to you over a period of time. You will carry some semblance of racism, particularly if you are a person of color, particularly if you are African American, because our legacy has been fighting oppression. I mean, for the smallest things, fighting oppression. So keep that in your knapsack. Here's the thing that I think everybody should be aware of. It's not said enough in the Black community, so I'm going to say it. Black people, not all, I'm not going to say all, I'm not going to make a generalization, but Black people, large numbers of us, extremely large numbers of us, do not trust old white men. Let me say it again. Black people, a large majority of us do not trust old white men. Why? Because history doesn't lie. We have two candidates. One who wants you to believe he's telling the truth, and the other one who wants you to believe he's telling the truth. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm saying they're fibbing. No, I'm saying that they are artists and they are artisans and they're craftsmen around the fact that they can get around the truth. You know, when Joe Biden was running, and I've tried to be really consistent. I didn't go to the Black History thing at the White House. Probably won't go to the E thing if they ask me, because I believe in some regards that what's been showing to me in terms of what's happening with Palestinian lives is only a byproduct of Joe Biden watching in his early years what happened to Black lives. You see what I'm saying? So I don't trust these old politicians, the Mitch McConnell. That will make 3 old ass white men, but I'm just going to stick to 2 right now. That there's something that has to be said, and it has to be said extremely clearly. I wish I had an elder here to correct me or speak from that old space. I'm speaking as a young man who's getting older. The problem with the candidates, the problem with Congress, the problem with the Senate is that you have old white space. What I mean by old white space is that this whole scope of what they talk about in terms of politics is similar to what you see in the Middle East. That Israel can bomb all these people, kill all these people, tell them to go to safety and bomb that spot, bomb Lebanon. But when they watch their own television, brothers and sisters, they see nothing about it. They don't see anybody being killed. They don't see anybody being impressed. You know, I don't know what they're watching, but they're not watching reality. The problem is with a Trump and the problem is with a Biden that you saw reality. And I've gone through the history books, brothers and sisters. I've gone back. I've asked questions of the elders who were around that time. Do you remember a Donald Trump stepping up? Do you remember a Joe Biden stepping up? Do you remember these people going, stop? The treatment of these people is abhorrent. This cannot happen. There is not a true, meaning, merciful, ubiquitous response to what happened to African Americans in the 1900s up to now. 1900s back to the 1800s, there's not been any kind of a response that says, damn it, I care. And Black folk, and particularly us, Black folk, we know the game. We know the hustle. By the time we get to November, when it's time to vote, we'd have been moved into this carriage of self-preservation and crisis and chaos. That people will tell us these are your only choices. That you are not, hear me now, that you are not able to create agency for yourself to change your own condition. That what's going to happen from up top, you just have to deal with it for another 4 years. I look at Joe Biden and I look at Donald Trump. I think Joe Biden might have a flashback one day with Kamala Harris. And while she's standing by him, she might go for a drink of water. He's going to say, hey, that water fountain is for white folks only. Donald Trump, he won't even have a flashback. He'll probably just say, hey, that water fountain is for white folks only. Now, I digress. But the point of the matter is, we have a very, very limited and watered down response every 4 years. And it comes to the fact that we have not adjusted and aligned our policies and our strategies, if you will, to directly confrontational, being creative and being confrontational in off election years, in challenging the presidents and challenging these politicians during the periods where they would normally be comfortable, bringing our conscience and bringing our issues to bear over and over in a consistent manner. The protests don't matter anymore. Let me give a shout out, Roberto Rashid. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, beloved. How you doing, man? We said the lesser two evils. I'm going to tell y'all about the lesser two evils, man. That's right. He said it's no longer viable. Here's what I want folks to know about the lesser two evils. It's still evil. It's still evil. You know, my grandfather said something one time, and he talked about white folks. His name was Clifford Moss Sr. You know, he wasn't, you know, what's the word Muslims say? He was unlettered. But he had all the common sense in the world. And he said, boy, let me explain racism to you. And this is when I'm about 10 years old. He said, when you go down south, when you see a black man hanging from a tree, don't think for once he's half hanging from the tree. He is fully hanging from the tree. There is no such thing as tiered racism, brothers and sisters. There's no such thing as tiered propaganda. It is either all or nothing. And the genius and the magic of modern politics is to present to us somehow that there are levels to this thing. It's only levels to this thing when it comes to us. And those levels have to do with plausibility, have to do with distraction, have to be doing with being disenfranchised. Why in 2024 are we still fighting? They call it voter suppression. Why can't we just vote? Why can't we just vote? Why can't we just figure out our candidates and go vote? Why are we subject to voter suppression? Why does Stacey Abrams have to come up with a whole program to fight voter suppression? God bless her. And I'm going to tell you why, brothers and sisters. Because we're foolish to think that all the things that we fight for, that people are willing to sit there and go, you know what, y'all can have that. You can have the vote, you can have that. You want to build businesses, you can have that. What, you want to go to good schools, you can have that. Everything we've had to fight for, believe me, the fight was never over. The rules change. The people change. You know, the guy down in, I can't remember, he's some kind of billionaire, I can't remember. This guy down in Oklahoma donated $1 million to survivors of Black Wall Street. All he said was, this wasn't right. And he said, I want to give this money to these surviving members' families so that, you know, their families could be doing a little bit better. And let me tell you something about this. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Eric. Good to see you, man. But here's the thing I want you to think about. And I'm going to jump on here in a minute. I'm going to shout out some Instagram folks in a minute. Please be patient with me. Modern politics has put us to sleep. It's put us to sleep. The proponents who led the charge for us to vote, who led the charge for equal housing, who led the charge for fair schools, you know, better schools, you know, those proponents are gone. Those proponents are gone. And it's been a habit of American politics when it comes to African Americans that they run out the clock. They run out the clock on issues that are important to us. One of our most prevalent voices today is 90-some years old. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, to the point that young folks don't know who he is. People are not aware of the Million Man March that happened in the mid-90s. They don't know. Almost 20-some years removed, you have people who the pathway, the sand has no footprints in it. And modern politics has done the same thing. It'll do it to me, it'll do it to you. If you wait another 4 years, figure out how old you're going to be in 4 years. Also figure out what your priorities are going to be. You know, the game is not honest. The game is set. But understand that the game is set. There's two ways you can handle it. You can play the game and you can lose, or you can come up with your own game. Right? Let me get some shout outs here. We got Dow of the North joined us. Sister Sylvia Morrison. Assalamu alaikum. What up? I'm sorry. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Big sis, incredible comedian. Creed Ave Media joined us. All right, we got H Habib, Asma, Sister Asma, Alazim, CWR Butter, Jen, Mo List. That's my nephew in Yellow Springs. What's going on, nephew? He's a weightlifter, man. Beautiful brother. Peace and blessings to your family, and tell everybody I said happy Valentine's Day up there. Jabril, long before Biden became a genocide Joe, he was known as Jim Crow Joe. That's what I'm talking about, Jabril. That's what I'm talking about. So racism and Zionism are two beaches from the same tree. There you go. See, Nardifa joined us. Jihad, okay. We got a lot of folks. Okay. So let me get back to my point. Because somebody brought this up, and I said this about 2 years ago. In fact, when Biden won the election, I was actually talking to Sister Satana, and he had to really rally. He had to really rally and go after the black vote for us to put him over. The black vote put him over. Let's just say that part, right? The first piece of legislation he put out was an anti-hate bill to protect Asians. Now, I don't have a problem with that. But it was an isolated case. There was some shooting. I don't know if it was a massage parlor. I don't know what it is in Georgia. But his emphasis was so quick and so direct to come up that black people were disenfranchised. They're like, damn, Joe, we just put you in the joint. We're still fighting to have the vote protected. And from that point, you haven't heard anything else. To the point now, I'm hearing black young politicians talking about how Trump is going to win. You know why? Because Joe Biden is not sincere. Trump does not worry about being sincere, so he is not sincere ever. But Joe Biden is not sincere. That you play the politics game over and over and over again. The moment, hear me now, the moment, brothers and sisters, crisis started on October 7th, I said Joe Biden is going to be on this side of the argument. He's going to do blah, 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 blah. Let me tell y'all something. It's a very, very disheartening thing to watch the leader of this free world, the leader of this country, constantly get played and say that they represent me. Constantly get played. You get played for money. You get played for political power. You get played for your position in the world. Nobody respects us because of him. And guess what? When Trump was in office, nobody respected us because of him. Two T-O-O, old ass white men. I'm only talking about these. I'm talking about these. I'm not talking about the countless others that are out there who somehow they've permeated society and get into places, because it's worse on the local level. It's worse on the local level. Because see, on the local level, we believe on the local level that, you know, the decisions, if you will, are not as impactful. They're extremely impactful. Because on the local level, it's even more important to be creative and strategic about how you suppress and oppress people. You know, Marcus Garvey, who we all know and love, is understated. I would say even underrated, because he spoke about the idea of building economy based on the fact that we understood that we can present a better model than what was being presented to us in front of us. The whole idea of the Black Star Line, whether blacks go back to liberty, that's not the point. That's not the point. It's that somebody is presenting us a very, very strong, creative, innovative model for political mobility that we strategically, and I'm not saying going to this politician or that politician, those days are done. I'm talking about that we subdivide power, the power that we have to go after these people individually. It's the reverse of lobbies, that we take the actual votes that they're trying to get and we go to Raleigh, North Carolina, and we go to Smallville, where it is, USA, and we go to Moorhead, Minnesota, and we go and we take the power that's been given us throughout history and we affect policy. One thing I'm going to say, and anybody can jump in. One thing I'm going to say about two old ass white men is this. Man, they fear creativity. When I say they fear creativity, I'm saying creativity that comes out of beats, creativity that comes out of African drums, creativity that comes out of raps, creativity that comes out of jazz. You know, they haven't been able to stranglehold that thing, that spirit, because you have two old white men that are spiritually void. They're morally deficient. You can't be a leader and be blind. Blind to people who are suffering, you know, blind to the folks who are being treated unfairly. You can't be that kind of leader. In that space, you have a dead heart. And American politics has become the place for having a dead heart. So you hear stories of African Americans, I'm going to vote for Trump, but that's the dumbest thing that you can do. I'm old enough to remember the rap songs when, you know, they talk about Trump like he was OG. You know, I remember the time of Morris Day, he had a song called Donald Trump Black Version. People naming themselves rap names Trump, identifying this guy. They had shows called The Apprentice. I don't know if you guys remember The Apprentice. There's shows called The Apprentice. And everybody wanted to be up underneath this guy to be the apprentice. What for? He was a failed businessman. His show was probably the biggest thing he had done, because in business he had failed. Now let me jump on Trump a minute. One thing about Trump is that he's consistent. He has consistently dropped his pants and pooped on aspirations, opportunities, existence of African Americans. He's done it. This election will be a referendum on that. It is a return now. He's running on a referendum that I will come back and I will finish the job. Now, the only thing that's scary than these two old white whatever is the young ones who have time and longevity to enact the same type of behavior. Just think about that. Right? Oh, wait a minute. There you go. Central Park 5, shout out to New York Councilman Yusef Salam on the CP5. Okay. Alhamdulillah. He's going to be appearing at a fundraiser for Masjid Muhammad in Washington, D.C. on March the 2nd. So please make sure you mark your calendars for that as well. I will be at Masjid Muhammad in Newark this Saturday, and a little emotional going back. You know, we lost Imam Hassan Sharif tragically, so to go back and visit, we have to do that. Sister Tana put up, yeah, I remember that. Sister Tana put up a page on the Central Park 5 back in the 80s, and I remember he was advocating for the death penalty. Is that correct, Satana? Now, all 5 boys, young kids, babies, they should be executed. I mean, this is the mindset. And people say, oh, he changed. You don't change when you're old white man. I've not seen old white men change. Ever. It is against their nature. Jabril doesn't like Jim Clyburn. Jim Clyburn, he's like the flip side of Tim Scott now. It's hard to sell Joe Biden. It's not hard to sell Trump, because he's told he's a liar. And everything is laid out on the table. You know what you get with Trump. If you put him in a situation, if he has a chance to screw you over, he'll screw you over. If he has a vendetta against you, you're going to get it. This is modern politics. It's almost like entertainment right now. When I say entertainment, what I'm saying is, like in comedy, nobody's telling jokes anymore. After the Cat Williams interview and the Monique interview, nobody's telling jokes anymore. It's not about the people, it's about personalities. And that's what we have now. This is what we have. So listen, I'm not going to take up too much time. I'm just going to explain to you guys two things that we should remember. The time and the space for trusting old white men has long passed. It's long past. I am 57 years old. I can't articulate what our elders went through, what our parents went through, what our grandparents went through to deal with people who openly suppressed them, openly oppressed them. I mean, seriously, some of them killed, some of them locked up unjustly because they had the opportunity and the law to support this type of crazy, this type of malice, evil, chaos. And then we had to sit there and take it. Our grandparents had to sit there and take it. I don't trust old white men. And as Joe Biden can't remember that he's Joe Biden. Stop it. As Joe Biden can't remember he's Joe Biden, he can remember to make sure that bill gets put through for Ukraine and Israel to get $9 billion, right? Was it $90 billion? He can remember that, right? He can remember the border war. He can remember that, right? Oh, you Negroes. And then he forgets. Then he goes back to Israel. Donald Trump, he's going to tell you the truth. The only problem is the truth how he sees it. He's even more like the Zionist because he can't see any reality other than his own. That in his world, 1 + 1 does equal 46. Or 1 + 1 equals enough votes for him to overturn the election in Georgia. Whoops, I said that. So let me wrap up. I'm going to wrap up by saying everybody, we need to wise up. These coffee counter conversations, these little knick-knack protests that we having, they ain't doing no good. They're not doing any good. Emancipate yourself from these rituals, if you will. They don't have the power that they had in the 60s because you had people in the 60s that were willing to die for what they wanted because they didn't have it. They didn't have it. They didn't have the vote. They didn't have good schools. They didn't have good places to work. They didn't have good jobs. They were willing to die because that's the only way to make the condition better. We are privileged. We can pick and choose when we want to protest. And our protests are not about our quality of life. We pick and choose quality of life. This election is a mandate on two men who do not align with our most basic core values. The question is, as I close, what are you going to do about it? I'm Preacher Moss. This is a shout-out show. I'll be reporting from Australia, inshallah, next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you next time.